scalability means like how scalable is your application, especially if the requirement to test the application with more number of users. Okay, so we'll discuss these three terms. Okay, again with respect to the types of performance testing. Now here, um, I'll just mention the types of performance testing. First is the first major type of test that we do is load testing. Okay, second, stress testing. Third, endurance or soak or duration testing. I mean, we call with all these names. Okay, fourth is scalability testing. Fifth, um, volume testing. Sixth, failover testing. Seven, let's say spike testing. Okay, and then there is something called smoke test also, which we will discuss. Okay, later. But for now, let's begin and understand these different types of performance testing. Like yesterday, I told you it's all about checking the performance of an application by applying some load. That's a very high-level definition of performance testing. But in real time, we have to perform various types of performance testing. Okay, like these load testing, stress testing, endurance testing, depending on the client requirement. Not every project will run or execute all these types of performance tests. It all depends on what is the client requirement. Okay, if client is not suggesting anything, then probably you can suggest these three. I'll tell you. Okay, so first let's begin with load testing. As I said, load testing is all about taking the speed of the application, taking the speed of the application by applying expected load. Okay, so taking the speed of the application by applying expected load. So load, as I said, number of users. Let's say, for example, 500 users. Let's say you are testing some bank application. Let's say 500 users is a load given by client. Okay, so who is giving this 500 number to you? So either client will give you this number, okay, saying that, hey, you have to do a load test for this application with 500 users. Okay, so um, like, okay, client will give you 500 users, or you can get it from uh, business analyst, or you can get it from product owner, the product team. Yeah, so the load is nothing but number of users. So for how many hours we have to run the test? So generally load test will be run for 1 hour duration, 1 hour steady state. We call it as 1 hour steady state. Okay, load test will be run for 1 hour steady state. Okay, 1 hour steady state. So every project, I mean, it's not like only this company, that project, nothing like that. Every project, generally we run load test for 1 hour steady state. Okay, I will discuss what is steady state and all later, but generally at a very high level, just understand that we run load test for 1 hour. Okay, let's say you start a load test at 9 a.m., probably you run till 10 a.m., 10:15, 10:50, like that. Okay, so 1 hour steady state. What is that we are going to verify? So we are going to verify the application performance, okay, in terms of speed. Like for example, when I say in terms of speed, um, how fast the application is loading, okay, like page loading time, or you can also call it as response times. Response times means when a request goes to server. Yesterday we have seen, right? We opened that U10 tool. So yesterday we have seen, I know the script, right? In that you have a launch request, login request, right? Logout request, right? Something like that. So when a request goes to server, okay, from that point till you get the response back, how much time it is taking? Okay, that is called response time. Okay, for example, this is launch request, right? Yesterday we have seen. So when this request goes to server, okay, obviously when you replay, what will happen? each of these requests will go to server and it will be processed there and you'll get the response. So what is a server and all these things we'll discuss tomorrow. But generally what happens is this request will go to server and it will process it and you'll get the response back. So the whole amount of time, okay, to execute these steps, okay, that is called response time. Okay, so we are going to verify the response times. Now, how much time it should normally take? Okay, how much time it should normally take? Normally, SLA is 2 seconds as per the industry standard. That means, as per the industry standard, whenever a user clicks a link or clicks a button, for example, the next page should load within 2 seconds, or the page should load within 2 seconds. Okay. In some cases, depending on the project, okay, they can change the SLA. SLA means the service level agreement. Okay, basically it's an agreement between the client and the whole stakeholders. Okay, the client will say that, especially to development team, the client will say that, hey, you are going to develop my application, right? My application pages should load within 2 seconds. So that is my SLA, service level agreement. Okay, so sometimes it will be 2 seconds, sometimes it will be 3 seconds, sometimes it will be 5 seconds also, depending on architecture. But the industry standard is 2 seconds. Okay, SLA stands for service level agreement. Okay, so now we verify for performance in terms of speed, page loading time, response times. Okay, and also we validate any errors, if any errors. Okay, like so many things, like we verify for any server uh, crashes or restarts. Now various things we verify here. Okay, so we'll discuss that in detail. So, all in all, what is that we are going to do is, when you run a load test, okay, basically it's all about checking the speed of the application by applying some load. So, what is load? Number of users. Who is going to give this number to you? The client will give this number to us. Okay, or the application team will give it to us. We need not worry. Okay, then load test will be run for 1 hour. What is that we are going to verify during the test or after the test? We are going to verify all these things. This is a very high level. You can verify, many more details as well. So this is the first major test. Okay, first major test that we have to perform. Okay, to be run. So that means if this test is a failure, let's say you ran a load test. Let's say the test is failed. When a test is failed, basically you cannot run these type of tests. If this is successful, then only you can go ahead and run any of these. That valid point, right? So when the application itself is not working or successful for the first major type of performance test, that is a load testing. What is the purpose of running the remaining tests? No use, right? So that's the reason this load test should be successful. This is the first major test. If this is a failure, we will not run until we get a fix. We will not run other types of tests basically. We can run this again, but we don't prefer to run these tests. Okay, now you can ask me, sir, how can you say whether a load test is a pass or fail? Okay, how can you say um, a load test is a pass or fail? So failure criteria. So you will call a test or you will mention the load test as a fail if number of failed transactions number of failed transactions exceed 2%. Okay, that is what I follow. Most of the performance testers follow. Some guys they follow 3%. Okay, or very rarely people follow 5% also. But in all the projects wherever I work, I always prefer 2%. That means when I run a load test for 1 hour, let's say some 10,000 transactions got executed. Out of these, if my failure transactions are more than 2%, that means the load test itself is a direct failure. Basically, when the errors are more, like you cannot get the accurate performance results. Okay, so what is 2% of 10,000? So 10% is 1,000. Okay, so 1% is 100. 2% means 200. If the failure transactions are more than 200, you can directly mark the load test as fail. However, some people will use 3 or 5% also, depending on your project. You can check with your team on what, what is that they are following. You can follow the same. Okay. So I mean, you can also mark the test as a partial success also, but we will discuss that later. So when to mark the test as partial success, when to mark it as a success, or when to mark it as a failure. Okay, we'll discuss that in detail in our upcoming sessions. So, uh, so I hope you understood like what is load testing all about. So when you are assigned to some project, the very important, okay, the first type major test that you have to execute is load testing. Okay, so hope you got clarity. Any doubts as of now? So you understood what is load test? Okay, so the very first test that we have to do, very very important. Now, all these things we'll do practically also. Okay, don't worry. We will execute a load test practically as well. Second one. Second one is stress testing. So what do you mean by stress testing? Actually, if you see the name itself is directly saying that stress. That means you are trying to apply the stress on the system. So stressing the application, okay, stressing the application with more number of users, with more number of users than the load test. Okay, this is called stress testing. That means, let's say in load test you run with 500 users. So stress testing you can run with, let's say, 600, 700, 800, 900, like that. Or you can you can keep on stressing the application until the application breaks. That is also a valid test. So some of the clients, they say that, hey, can you tell me the breaking point or the system crashing point? Okay, with how many users the application is crashing? Okay, or how many users with when there are two things, like you can increase the load little bit, so that it is also called as stress. Okay, and then at some time, very rarely the client will ask you to run the test until it breaks also. Okay, so stress testing.